Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Richard Vines. Rich is the Chair and Chief Executive of Rare Cancers Australia, Chair of the Australian Genomics Health Alliance Community Advisory Board, Convener and Co-Chair of the National Oncology Alliance, and Deputy Chair of the Australian Genomics Cancer Medicines Program, now called OMICO. Please welcome Richard.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to CanForum 2020. Thank you, Sophie, and my thanks to Minister Hunt for both his kind words and his incredible support of the efforts that we've made over the years to improve the lives and health outcomes of Australians living with cancer. In 2017, when the Minister addressed the CanForum at the start of the day, he announced increased funding for rare cancer research, which he just referenced, and also an inquiry into pan-tumour reimbursement through the PBS. And at the time, Joe Hildebrand, who writes for The Australian, described it as the shortest political campaign in history, which was 15 minutes. And I think we might have beaten that today, so I hope Joe is watching. But the opportunity to bring the broader cancer community together to build the Cancer Futures framework is so critical to those Australians living with cancer that I promise you we are going to get this done. We live by the mantra that treatment delayed is treatment denied, and that can never be acceptable in a country like Australia. So again, welcome. In 2015, when Kate, who sends her apologies today as she's not well enough to be here, and I first conceived the idea of the CanForum, we envisaged an event when the cancer community came together to share bold and innovative ideas. From memory, I think we had about 40 guests at the University of Sydney that day, and we were blessed with a great MC in Sophie Scott and some fantastic speakers, including Professor Ian Fraser and Professor David Thomas. Professor Thomas you'll be hearing from later, and it's really heartwarming to remember that in 2015 he was in part discussing the theory of genomic science, and now, 5 years later, he'll be reporting to you on real-world outcomes from the clinical trials that he's been running as part of OMICO and presenting a vision of how genomic science can be made increasingly available to all Australians in the coming years, as the Minister was saying. And that's why we're here, so we can look to a better future for Australians living with cancer. That's why we wrote Vision 2030 and why we invited you all here. We hope that these forums would inspire us all to work harder and to think outside the box. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And there is no better premise on which to base today's discussion on Vision 2030. Let's own the quality, the quantity, and the speed of Australian cancer care. And to help us envision that future, we have a great lineup of speakers today, and you will also see some short video teasers appearing during the event. And we built these to allow as many Australians as possible to see and understand what the future of cancer care could be. There's a series of videos where patients and experts discuss cancer as it is today and what it can be tomorrow. They will be released over the next few weeks, and we will make sure you all have access to them. But back to the present. My understanding is that the 40 guests from 2015 has grown to around 1,000 attendees today. And Kate and I and the team at Rare Cancers Australia and the National Oncology Alliance are very grateful for your support, and to all the participants, sponsors, experts who helped us bring Vision 2030 to life, we thank you from the bottom of our heart. One organisation in particular that deserves our thanks is the Minderoo Foundation. Led by Steve Burnell, who is speaking later, they have been great to work with. They've been incredibly supportive of our efforts. And in particular, Steve, Bruce Mansfield and Tess Harper have been engaged and supportive throughout the project. Our thanks to them and the rest of the Minderoo team, and of course to Minderoo's founders, Andrew and Nicola Forrest. Thanking the RCA team is a big job also. After today, they can reintroduce themselves to their families and feel very proud of what they've achieved. Please forgive me if I specifically acknowledge the team in Amanda, Alexander, Brian, Beth, Christine, Natalie, Mike, James, Nikki, Jackie, Zach, Lydia and Emily, and of course Kate, for all their extraordinary efforts. We're a small organisation, and as the team constantly reminds me, we have ambitions beyond our capabilities, but they always get it done. So thanks and apologies to all of them. Also, I'd like to congratulate the Minister and thank him for the extraordinary effort and success he has had in leading Australia's response to the COVID pandemic. We are extremely fortunate for Australia to be where it is today, and that's in no small part due to the leadership of the Minister and his team right through 2020. That he's had the intellectual bandwidth to embrace our discussion around cancer and a million other topics, as well as dealing with COVID, says all you need to know about the man and his commitment to his role. And when we think about COVID, there are lessons for us all in how we handle the pandemic, what we've done well, and where we've been challenged. And so I thought I would take a moment to reflect from my perspective on what we've learned and how it can translate to the Cancer Futures Framework, the pillars of which should be on your screen now. I will be brief, I promise. Firstly, our Indigenous health workers have had significant success in managing the impact on communities during the pandemic. The health and other communities leaders responded quickly and highly effectively and sensitively, and this has been largely attributed to strong relationships between the community and the health organisations, with particular emphasis on effective communication with the most vulnerable. We need to learn from this success and make sure we apply the lessons to help shape our models of cancer care moving forward. Our culturally and linguistically diverse communities have also done well, but there have been challenges with health literacy and with patients not presenting to doctors for non-COVID health issues. This is a salutary lesson for all of us that not everyone in this country speaks university-level English, and we need a health system that reaches beyond the traditional speaking Anglo-Celtic community. We also learned that when we need to work with federal and state health systems at the same time, they can function harmoniously, but that there is the potential for fractures. We need to build pathways that address these risks at the advent of the emerging cancer technologies, so we're not squabbling over who pays for what and hence delaying access. Similarly, we saw anxieties emerge in our hospital system to such an extent that at a time when the public system was tooling up for COVID, we had private hospitals starting to retrench nursing staff. It was really only Minister Hunt's quick action that avoided a potentially disastrous outcome there. So both federal, state and public-private need deep thought in the light of the technologies we see coming, and we must get ahead of the game. We also learned some things about the pharmaceutical industry and research as well. Like it or not, when the world is on its knees looking not only for a vaccine or a cure, but also for a way to distribute them, there really is only one game in town, and that is Big Pharma. And it's the same with cancer. We need a grown-up, and as they were saying in the US over the weekend, put on your big boy pants recognition that they are an intrinsic part of the solution, and that they are for-profit entities, and that they are global. How we reconcile these elements will determine so much about the treatments we're able to bring to our patients and how timely we are about it. And I go back to that phrase, that treatment delayed is treatment denied. At NOAA, we believe that all treatment industries need to be in the tent, working ethically with the rest of the cancer community to find solutions. The COVID experience supports that. Something that also happened with COVID that impacted the way we saw the disease was that we went inside the intensive care wards on the nightly news. We saw patients in comas on their tummies with ventilators fighting for life, and it scared us. Cancer is largely kept away from the public, and I wonder if that is right. That's why in everything we do, we include both the patient experience directly and also through their stories. We're incredibly grateful to those families that allowed us to include Ned's, Scott's, Madonna's, Ash's, and of course Kathy's story when she talks to Christine later on. If we're serious about patient-centred care, we need to be listening to them and talking to them, not about them. We learnt about the importance of science and scientists and research. You can't get away, as we found out in the US over the weekend, with fake newsing a disease. It's just not listening. We need to strengthen and maintain our research sector so that, to paraphrase the Prime Minister, we can create smart jobs and growth. And Professor Thomas will have a lot more to say about that later. We learned that analysing the DNA of the disease tells us so much, and with COVID, it significantly increased our ability to contact trace using the DNA of the various virus strains. That ability to analyse and understand disease is core to emerging cancer therapies, and it's part of the framework. Equally, we learnt that data is critical and offers us the ability to analyse and understand what we're seeing. Our capacity to build models that were increasingly refined, artificial intelligence, if you like, was critical to managing the population and determining where and how to lock down, open up, and keep alert. And lastly, and most importantly, we learned that speed and flexibility are critical to the care of the cancer community. We showed that we can adapt, change policies, work together, and when push really came to shove, we decided that in this country, the health of our people is much more important than the wealth of our nation. We're reminded that in the end, as my colleague Christine Coburn is fond of saying, we really do live in a society, not an economy. And if we take that philosophy and apply it to cancer care over the next decade, I have absolutely no doubt that we can really achieve 5-year survival rates that are greater than 90% for all Australians living with cancer. So let's build a Cancer Futures framework and let's build it together. Thank you.